Hello, my name is Robert Pietzker and I'm happy to present the work I did with my colleagues Sebastian Osorio and Renato Rodriguez on the impact of tighter EU ETS targets on the decarbonization of the EU power sector. The aim of this study was to derive policy-relevant insights on electricity sector investments and generation, CO2 prices and costs. We did this through a scenario-based analysis with a numerical model, the LIMES EU model. We focus here on two core scenarios. First, the reference scenario, called REF, which simply portrays the current targets. Secondly, an ambitious scenario called EMP, which takes the likely new -55% reductions and splits them according to the current effort split between ETS and effort sharing decision sectors. The model we use is a detailed linear optimization model for the EU electricity sector that also contains industry emissions, which are represented by a marginal abatement cost curve. What are the impacts of the two scenarios on CO2 prices and power sector? Well, we see this plot here, which shows in dashed the CO2 prices with a scale on the right side. If we compare the black line for the reference scenario with the green line for the ambitious scenario, we see that the prices would more than double from roughly 26 euros per ton CO2 in 2030 to 60 euros per ton CO2. This would clearly drive down emissions in the electricity sector. If we sum over the whole time period, they would be reduced by about 45%. How do these emission reductions come about? Well, let's look at the generation mix. You see here the stacked bars. On the left side, always the reference scenarios. On the right side, the ambitious scenario. What is clearly visible that in all these scenarios, the future EU power sector is mainly based on renewable energies. If we look at the difference between the two scenarios, we see on the one side an almost complete coal phase out before 2035 in the ambitious scenario, as well as increased renewable shares. For example, in 2030, it goes from 59 to 66%. What are the economic impacts of these two scenarios? If we look at electricity prices, here plotted in cents per kilowatt hour over the next 30 years, we see very small impacts. They increase on average by 0.5 cents per kilowatt hour. If we look at total power sector costs, those increase by roughly 5%. We also did a number of sensitivity studies. I want to focus here on one, namely our checking what happens if you refrain from using nuclear or CCS in the power sector. We find that while not using nuclear or fossil CCS has no discernible economic impact, not using biomass plus CCS would increase emissions slightly, but have almost no impacts on electricity price. So to summarize, tightening the EU ETS targets in line with the Green Deal would potentially double CO2 prices, halve power sector emissions, but have only small overall economic impacts. So in total, tightening the target would be an efficient measure to bring the EU power sector closer to the Paris Agreement ambition. If you're interested in more information, check out our working paper. Thank you.